Good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Forecast. We are taking a live look at downtown Buffalo right now. And yeah, it's a pretty gray and dreary day out there. We were tracking those showers, obviously a lot steadier earlier this morning, but we're still dealing with those lingering effects. I kind of just want to start you with a 4-camera shot of what's going on around the region. We have Salamanca, Angola, Buffalo, and Batavia. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, I have got 4 pictures right here. And really the main word I'm thinking of is gray and kind of dreary. We have obviously those raindrops on the cameras, so we're still dealing with those lingering showers that are around the area. We will continue to dry out as we head through the rest of the day, but we're not really going to warm up much. These temperatures that we see right now in the 60s, kind of what we're going to be looking at for the rest of the day. So let's kind of talk about those weather headlines while we wait for Patrick to join us. I know you're all waiting for Patrick. He will be here shortly, but for right now, let's just tell you what to expect for the day. It's going to stay kind of cloudy and cool. We saw those camera views with those temperatures in the 60s. They're not going to be moving much throughout the rest of the day because even as the showers move out, we're going to hold on to that cloud cover. We're not going to get a lot of sunshine to help warm us up. Also, our winds are going to be coming more out of the east-northeast, which is more of a cooling, damp wind as opposed to out of the southwest, which is our warming wind. So we're kind of just holding on to those dreary temperatures and kind of a gray day, but already by tomorrow, we are back to the sunshine. In fact, Tuesday and Wednesday are looking really nice, probably the best days of the week before we are tracking the return of some showers, more spotty showers, not quite the widespread showers that we had earlier today, but definitely spotty showers by the end of the week. So let's kind of just take a look back for a moment at what June has been like. June obviously starts this beginning of meteorological summer, which is when meteorologists kind of flip over the calendar with the season. It helps us with record keeping, but astronomically, yesterday was actually our first day of summer. We crossed over to summer at 4:24 a.m. That was the summer solstice, because that is when the sun crosses over the Tropic of Cancer. That is when it reaches its highest point in the sky that it will in the northern hemisphere. So that is officially when we mark the start of summer. But really, it was the first half of the month before it was astronomical summer that it was really feeling a lot more like summer. We had several days in those mid and upper 70s, which at the time was above average. Even quite a few days in the 80s, 3 days in the mid 80s during the second week of June. And remember, that week is when we had a lot of that humidity as well. So we really got a summery feel, but then starting last week, we kind of cut off that summery feel. We saw a return to spring. Specifically, Monday of last week was our cool day in the 60s. That's kind of what we're going to see again this week before those temperatures generally meandered in the low to mid 70s. And that's where we have been. And we are going to continue to be there for this next week. Now, those temperatures a little bit up, I would say, from what we had last week, but it's almost a mirror image of what we saw. Obviously, today is our cool day with those temperatures generally in the low to mid 60s, but then the rest of the week in the 70s, really comfortable, a lot of sunshine. Even on those days where we are tracking showers, I don't think they're going to be washouts, but it's going to be a really nice week. However, when we're going to take a look at that calendar, like I had just before, it is likely going to be more blue days because average highs for this time of year are getting up there into the upper 70s. About 77 is what the high is for today, and that's going to continue to push toward 80 as we look toward the month of July. Now, speaking of July, July is coming fast at us, and looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, which is about, looking ahead 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, it is going to be July. Looking ahead to July 4th weekend, what do we think we're going to be expecting? Well, the Climate Prediction Center thinks that we are pretty likely to be seeing above average temperatures for that first week, those first few days of July. And with average temperatures for the start of July being generally in the low 80s, we're likely going to be seeing the return of some 80s, maybe even the mid 80s pretty soon. So just hold out, because right now, taking a look around the country, yeah, we're kind of cool. 62 in Buffalo right now, but you do see all of that heat just in the in the southeast. All of that heat is holding there while we have these cooler temperatures just a little bit further west and north. And you really see that divide is where this front is. This is the system that came through earlier today, brought those showers. We're still seeing the remnants of that, but the majority of that system is really starting to push into New Jersey and parts of Pennsylvania. And that's where it's starting to cool down those temperatures a little bit. And now just for our area, we do see those spotty showers. Now, I believe I could continue to do the forecast, but I believe we have Patrick ready. Patrick outside. I mean, I'm looking at the radar. It does look a little damp. Maybe it's dry in Hamburg. What's it like there where you are, Patrick?
Wait, hey, you just provided, what did you call it last week?
An amuse-bouche?
What was that thing you find on a menu of the order? Amuse-bouche. Just like last Monday, right?
Yeah.
It was a little preview of the forecast. Thank you, Lauren. We had just a couple of technical hiccups on my end we had to figure out. But you asked a very good question, and that is, what's it doing down here in Hamburg now? And by the way, we're going to go back to Lauren because she's got a really nice discussion on coastal weather, okay? Which, believe it or not, we can have an influence on coastal weather here locally as well. But more on that coming up. We had a pretty good soaking rain this morning here officially at the Hamburg sub-office, the Hamburg Bureau. We got about 7/10 of an inch of rain. Right now it's just cloudy, kind of murky and drizzly, but certainly manageable, okay? And the good news is that we're not going to see a repeat this evening of the slower commute that we had this morning due to the rain. Okay, let's start by taking a look at our forecast. We'll kind of lead you through it. This is kind of our headlines, if you will. And clouds with some lingering showers or drizzle expected for the rest of the day. Unseasonably cool temperatures in the 60s. We should be in the mid to upper 70s this time of the year. We're going to be about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than that. Back to sunshine, though, tomorrow. That's good. Back into the 70s tomorrow. And that's also good. Same for Wednesday. Showers make a return on Thursday, but it does not appear to be the kind of rain that we had today, okay? It'll be more scattered showers on Thursday and maybe a rumble of thunder as well. So taking a peek then at your two-day forecast, clouds and some sprinkles or a shower or drizzle today, mid-60s. For tonight, mostly cloudy, mid-50s, and then tomorrow we're going to see a much better day. We'll call it mostly sunny. There will be some clouds in the morning, but they're going to scour out very nicely and a temperature of 74 degrees. So satellite and radar shows that swath of rain pushing east of here, and it looks like we're going to see, I would call it better than this morning, but not perfect. I mean, we're still dealing with some low-level moisture and drizzle and little spritzes, if you will. But not the steady rain that we saw earlier. That's clearly pushing off to the east. And zooming in a little tighter, you can see, again, not much showing up too much on satellite and radar. Certainly a lot of clouds on satellite, but not much accumulating rain falling anymore at all. And Future Look kind of shows that trend too, as the rain shield pushes farther to the east. We're mired in clouds for the rest of the day. As mentioned, a little sprinkle or a shower possible, and temperatures will be holding in the low to mid 60s. That is it. Tonight, we hold on to the clouds. Lows will fall into the 50s again. And then for tomorrow, gray skies to start early, but I think they're going to clear out pretty quickly. So for your Tuesday, a vast improvement with some sunshine and temperatures back into the 70s, or at least closer to average than we were today. A quick look at your rainfall. For the month of June, we're at 4.74. On average, we should be about 2.5 inches. Last year, we had barely over an inch of rain, so we're running quite a surplus. The forecast highs today call for numbers in the 60s, and then tomorrow we're going to see highs in the 70s under mostly sunny skies. Additional rainfall today will be minimal. We've already had our, 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, and on Future Look in the long range, you'll notice that we have a nice weather tomorrow, nice weather on Wednesday, and our next batch of showers arrives on Thursday, and there could be a little thunder with that. Nothing severe expected at this point, but a few scattered showers on Thursday. So for today, cloudy, sprinkles or scattered shower, mid-60s. Tonight, mostly cloudy and down into the 50s. And then tomorrow, mostly sunny, 74. Doesn't that look lovely? Long range forecast. There are the showers on Thursday for both the southern tier and for Niagara and Erie counties. And at this point, Friday, of course, we have the Roswell, the race for Roswell. I mean, the Peloton on Friday night should be fine. We've got the Taste of Country on Friday night. That should be a go. But the ride for Roswell looks good for Friday night and for Saturday at this point. And Sunday, we could get closer to 80 degrees. Lauren is going to talk about coastal weather, and she'll be right back with that. All right, welcome back everyone on this kind of dreary Monday, clouds and drizzle. I gotta be honest with you, having grown up in a coastal city, this is the kind of weather you often see along the coast. Clouds, low clouds, drizzle and fog, especially on the West Coast anyway. But Lauren is gonna talk a little bit more about the influences and the aspects of weather at our coast. Hello.
Hello, Patrick. Yeah, I figured, you know what? We're nearing the end of June. It's officially summer. A lot of people kind of tend toward the water to get away, and I want to talk about the temperature in the water, what that means for areas just along the coast. So we're going to just talk a little bit about coastal and water in general with respect to our weather. So like I mentioned, we officially crossed over to summer on June 21st. That was yesterday at 4:24 a.m. That was the summer solstice. That is when the sun is the highest in the sky. That is also our longest day of the year at 15 hours and 21 minutes now every single day. For the next several, we are going to be losing daylight until the winter solstice, but for right now, we're holding on to a lot of that sunshine, and that is going to give us some warming water temperatures. So this is kind of just an overview of the different temperatures that water can be and whether or not it is safe and or comfortable to actually be in the water. So starting at 32, that is freezing. Water, especially moving water in the ocean, can be below freezing because when it's moving, there's a bit more kinetic energy behind it. So the temperature can actually fall below 32, even though that is the freezing point. But generally 32, that is freezing. Certainly not water you want to be in. Then when you get to 34 to 41, that's considered ice swimming, also not something you want to be doing. That is extremely cold water, not good for our bodies. Once you hit 43 to 52, it is very recommended that you have at least a wetsuit for even a short swim if you are going to go into the water. It is dangerous if you are not pretty much covered up because, again, that water is very cold for our bodies. Once you get to 54 to 61, it is still quite chilly if you are not acclimated to swimming in pretty cold waters. A wetsuit is still recommended. Now, once you get to 63 to 70, that's cool water. It's generally fine for short swims. That's when you can start to get in the water. Maybe you don't want to spend a lot of time in it, but that is a bit more passable, starting to get more comfortable. Then 72 to 77, that is kind of the ideal, the sweet spot for the kind of water temperature that you want to be swimming in, especially if you are more of an active swimmer. You're going to be moving around a lot. That is the ideal water temperature. And then once you hit 79 plus, especially getting into the 80s, that is great for relaxation, you know, if you just want to be sitting in the water. But if you're going to be doing any kind of strenuous activity, like if you want to be swimming laps, then it actually gets a little bit difficult and it's a little too warm for your body. So that's kind of the overview. Now I highlight the 63 to 70. Oh, so sorry. I highlight the 63 to 70 because I was checking the temperatures for Lake Erie, and that is kind of in the range that we are right now. So if you want to kind of dip your toes in the water, that's probably okay, but you don't want to spend too much time in there. And then this is really the temperature where we want to be. There are some areas that are like that, but we are not quite there yet. So like I mentioned, Lake Erie, about 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It really depends on where in the water you measure it, kind of where on the coast, how far deep you're going, but generally 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's not too bad out there. But just taking a look at generally how the lake water changes over the course of the year, we're pretty much on average for where we would be for late June heading into July. Obviously, those water temperatures really don't peak until August because water is something that is a lot more resistant to temperature changes. It has a much higher specific heat, so it takes a while for it to heat up, and then also takes a little bit longer for it to cool down. And because so much of our planet is water, that's why, the summer solstice is not our warmest day of the year. It takes until usually July or August for those temperatures to peak because water can dictate our temperatures so much. Now, if you kind of remember when I spoke a week or two ago about what the ideal temperature, room temperature was for people, typically about 65 to 75 is when people are most comfortable. But when I was talking about those water temperatures, it was a little bit warmer than that, around like 72 to 79 is preferred. So why, when we're in the water, do we actually prefer a warmer temperature? And that's pretty much because water has a higher thermal conductivity than air does, which basically means that it takes heat from our bodies more readily than the air does. So we're losing more heat when we're in the water compared to when we're out in the air. So we need a warmer water temperature in order to remain comfortable. It's not too different, but it is notable. Also, a lot of the reason why people love being in the water so much, you jump in the water, you get out, and you just immediately feel cooler. And a lot of that is because of the properties of water with its high specific heat. I spoke about this a lot when I was talking about sweat and why higher dew points, when we can't sweat, we can't cool off. Kind of the goal when you jump in the water and then come out, you have that water still remaining on your skin, and it takes heat from your body in order to evaporate, to go from a liquid to a gas. And so we naturally just do cool down thanks to the water. Now I want to kind of take a look at the water temperatures. How are things looking generally? I'm looking mostly at the Atlantic. I feel like that's where most of us would go if we are headed to the ocean, if you're not going to go to the lake. So off the coast of Maine, still quite cold, about 50 degrees. Then looking toward the Jersey Shore, about 67 degrees. So not too dissimilar from Lake Erie. Maybe you can kind of dip your toes in, spend a little bit of time, but it's still too cold for any kind of lengthy swim. But then off the coast of South Carolina into the 80s, just around Puerto Rico, about 83, and in the Gulf, 85. You do notice all of these 80s and 80-degree water temperatures are pretty much the benchmark for where you would want to be for hurricane development. I say want in terms of what is ideal for a hurricane to develop. Obviously, we do not want a hurricane to develop because that can cause a lot of problems, but generally you want to hit 80 degrees for that water to be warm enough to really fuel the storm. Now, anything 82 or above, that starts to help with that intensification. And really, once you get toward 85 or above, especially once you start pushing 90, that is when we tend to see that rapid intensification. And I do highlight the Gulf. Over the past couple years, there have been many storms that we've been tracking that have been maybe a category 1, category 2, but then they hit the Gulf and they rapidly intensify to a 4 or a 5. So looking at that, that does look kind of prime for hurricane season, which we are in right now. And this is just a general idea of above versus below average for this time of year. For the North Atlantic, it actually is a good mix of below average temperatures, but in this zone further south where hurricanes tend to track and develop and intensify, that is above average, and especially in the Gulf. So just something to keep an eye on. But we also just talk a lot about the water temperatures because they have an effect on those areas immediately to the coast. You see these kind of green, these oranges, even some reds further inland, but then you see those yellows and greens just on the coast. Those spots tend to be cooler because when you have water's influence, actually I'm just going to skip ahead to this graphic right here, water tends to be cooler, so you get an onshore wind in a lot of coastal spots. So because the water is comparatively cooler, the ground warms up, heats up quite a lot. So then air moves from that cooler water over to the coast. So it cools you, and that's why a lot of people tend to go to the beach, not just to be in the water, but just to feel the cooling influence of the water. Right, Patrick? All right, I don't know if Patrick heard me, but we are going to be right back with more Beyond the Forecast.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I really loved what Lauren was talking about there. You know, growing up in a coastal city of San Francisco, you might have heard that term that Mark Twain once said, San Francisco, the coldest winter I ever experienced was a summer in San Francisco. And that's because the water off the bay is so cold. It's in the 50s, barely the low 60s, even in the middle of summer. And even the ocean in Southern California, Lauren, is really, really cold. When you see those Baywatch shots of those guys running down the beach in Southern California, the water is still very cold there comparative to the same latitude along the East Coast. So I grew up surfing quite a bit, and it was full wetsuit, even in the middle of summer, Lauren, even in the fall when you had warmer temperatures because that water was so cold.
Really? Wow. I mean, I have not spent much time on the West Coast at all. I'm so accustomed to the East Coast and those generally warmer temperatures. And I mean, especially you kind of bring that up. One of the things that I was going to show is just how the Gulf keeps so much of the Southeast so warm and so humid. I mean, I've been looking at those dew points. I don't think I've seen them below the 70s for, you know, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. It is just night and day compared to the West Coast, where it's a lot drier and cooler. Yeah,
that Gulf of Mexico is just like, as you know, a bathtub and serving for fuel for hurricanes. Get this. You know what I found really interesting? Obviously, the Strait of Hormuz has been in the news quite a bit lately because of the conflict over there. Do you know what the water temperature is in the Persian Gulf and near the Strait of Hormuz? It's the water temperature is 95 to 97 degrees. Can you imagine jumping in the ocean in that part of the world?
No,
and it's
that is
like almost a hot tub.
Yeah, that is, wow. I mean, I imagined it would be warm, but I didn't think it would be quite that warm. So yeah, water is fascinating in how it affects obviously so much of our weather, with the Earth being 70+% water. All right, that is a wrap on Beyond the Forecast.
All right, we'll see you on
Patrick and Kevin
Friday.
On Friday.